You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5777, 2017. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayechi, and in our Parsha, we get the brachos, the blessings that Jacob gives the 12 tribes, his 12 sons, and the blessings are prefaced with the following statement of the verse. This is in chapter 49, verse 1. Vayikra Yaakov el banav, Jacob called to his sons, Vayomer, and he said, Hey Asvu, gather together, Vagida lachem, and I will tell you, Es asher yikra eschem acharis hayomim, that which will occur to you in the end of days. Verse 2, Hikavtzu, gather together, another language of gathering. Vishimu b'nei Yaakov, come listen, O sons of Jacob. Vishimu el Yisrael avichem, listen to your father Israel. There's very interesting questions that we can ask and we can try to understand about these verses. I'd like to share with you some beautiful midrashim that begin to open up for us if we try to understand their depth. What's going on in the psukim, what's going on in the verses. After he finishes with this introduction, it seems like he's going to speak about the Acharis Hayom, he's going to speak about the end of days. He doesn't really speak about the end of days. He speaks about each of the tribes, talks about their midos, talks about their character traits, talks about the things that are special about them, the things that they've done wrong, the things that they need to correct, the things that are unique about each of the tribes. And the Pasha Pshat question, the simple understanding that we need to have, first of all, has to do with what is the connection between this introduction, which has to do with the Acharis Hayom and the end of days. How does that connect to what's going on with Yaakov Avinu, speaking about the midos, the character traits, what's special and unique about each of Yaakov Avinu's sons, who would be the beginning of each of the tribes. So I'd like to share with you the medrash here. There are a few things that the medrash says. It's a lengthy medrash. I'm going to read pieces of it. But there are many things that are going on here, different aspects, different elements of what's going on here. And we'll see that there's a beautiful tapestry that comes together as we begin to understand what the medrash is talking about. The medrash starts off by quoting a pasuk in Tehillim in Psalms, chapter 57, verse 3. It says, Ekra le'Elokim elyon, I will call out to God, the most exalted one. It says the medrash, two different understandings as to what this pasuk is talking about, what the verse is speaking about in Psalms. And one of them has to do with us. The other one seems to not have to do with us. But we're going to see what it's teaching us by drawing a parallel, by giving us two different understandings, two different explanations of the verse. Ekra le'Elokim elyon. What does it mean when the verse says, when King David says, I'm going to call out to the uppermost God? Rosh Hashanah. It's referring to what happens on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the year, on the day that we crown God our King. Then the next part of the verse says, Lakel gomer alai. As the Eitz Yosef understands the verse, it means that God teaches me something. What does God teach me? Lakel shegomar alai b'yom kippurim. There's something that happens on Rosh Hashanah, we crown God our King, but on Yom Kippur, we are taught something. What is God teaching us in Yom Kippur? Leida ezel Hashem ve'ezel gzeira. Very interesting. That there are two seirim, there are two goats. One is to be offered as a sacrifice to God on Yom Kippur, and one is sent out to an Eretz Gezerah, to a barren place where it's thrown off of a cliff, it's destroyed, and it carries on it the sins of the Jewish people. So these two seir and these two goats are identical. You look at them, you can't tell them apart. But there is a goral, there's a lottery that's done on Yom Kippur. One of them is chosen to be a sacrifice to God, and one of them is chosen to be sent to carry the sins of the Jewish people, as it were, and to be sent out to this barren place and thrown off of a cliff. And in so doing, represent the fact that the sins of the Jewish people are destroyed, are sent away, and God forgives us. But what we see here is Rosh Hashanah is God's kingship. But on Yom Kippur, there's an aspect of delineation. Who is who? What's what? Who represents God, so to speak, and who represents goodness and kindness and all that God represents? And who represents the opposite of that? Who represents sin? Who represents those things that are destroyed and sent away? Now, in a parallel way, which we need to understand, even though the Medrash says davar acher, which means another explanation, it's really saying that something that parallels that. Ekra le'Elokim ze Yaakov Avinu. The fact that I'm going to call out to God is a reference to Jacob. And specifically here in our context, that as he was going to give blessings to his sons, he called out to God. He asked God for help. Lakel gomer alai And what is the idea of the teaching that's going on here, which parallels what went on Yom Kippur? That God agreed with him, or really we could say God directed his thinking. Hashem showed him exactly what to say, which blessings and which direction to give to each of his sons. And thus he was able to give the brachas. He was able to give blessings. He was able to say, this particular tribe is going to be lechof yamim. He's going to live on the coast and he's going to be involved in business. And this tribe is going to have a certain location next to him, which is referring to Zvulun and Yisachar. And each of the things that he said about each of the tribes were divinely guided. So here too, there's an element of delineation. There's an element of different characteristics, different character traits. Some things may seem even more spiritual than others. Some tribes, the tribe of Yisachar is a tribe that's involved in learning Torah. The tribe of Zvulun is involved in earning money, in supporting the Torah of Yisachar. Each one seems to have a different aspect, a different idea that's associated with them. That was also guided and chosen by Hashem himself, by God. Now, when we read on in the verses, it's very interesting. It speaks about an asifa. Yaakov Avinu says, I want you to gather together. Hey asvu. So the Medrash explains like this, very interesting, remarkable. Vayomer hey asvu v'gomer. What is this idea of gathering together? Hey asvu me'eretz Mitzrayim. So it speaks about hey asvu, which is a language of gathering, and he also uses the word hikavtzu, which also means to gather. It's a different type of gathering. So there's a hey asvu, which is all of the Jews that are throughout the land of Egypt. All of the disparate Jews that are spread out throughout the land of Egypt need to gather together, come together. V'yikavtzu l'Ramses, but there's a location where they all gather to, which is Ramses, which was the place through which, when it came time for Geula, when it was time for the Jewish people to leave the land of Egypt, they all left through Ramses. Now, what's amazing is there's a parallel type of gathering. There's the Geulas Mitzrayim, the redemption of the Jewish people from Egypt, and there's the future redemption, the Geula Asida, which is going to take a parallel form to the original Geula, the Geulas Mitzrayim. So we have this gathering that took place then. The Jewish people gathered to Ramses, and as Yosef explains, they went out biyad Ramah. They went out with an outstretched hand. Hey, There's another gathering that's going to take place in the future time. And it's going to be the 10 Shvatim, the 10 tribes, are going to gather together to the place of Yehuda and Benjamin, to Judah and Benjamin, which is the area of Eretz Yisrael. And the Yosef explains because that's where the final war is going to take place, which involves the offspring of Yehuda, which is going to be Mashiach ben David, the Messiah who's going to come from King David, who originally came from Yehuda, who came from Judah. Now, what's very interesting, and his explanation is the following statement. Tzivai son, says the Medrash, that when Jacob said this, he was commanding them to show the proper respect for the tribe of Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, and the tribe of Benjamin. There was an instruction by saying all of you need to gather together from your respective places. The 10 Shvatim, these other 10 tribes, they each have their own special place in the land of Israel. But they need to disregard their regular place. They need to gather together to Jerusalem, really, because that's the place where Yehuda and Benjamin meet. The place where Judah and Benjamin meet is at the Beis Hamikdash, at the temple, on the Temple Mount. That's the place where everyone needs to gather to and show deference to, show respect to Yehuda and Benjamin. What is the idea of this respect? What does it mean that they need to come to Yerushalayim? What is the idea of Jerusalem? Why is Jerusalem the center of all of these aspects? Why is it the center, the place where Mashiach has to arrive from? What is the idea of that? What is the significance of the fact that they are showing honor to Yehuda and Benjamin, to these tribes? What is the depth of this teaching? What is the depth of what the Medrash is trying to bring across? And also significantly, how does this connect to what we said about Yom Kippur and about Yaakov, that he was giving blessings and showing each one of them who they were? How does this connect as well? Because the verses are going from one to another. There's a flow here. What is the flow of these verses? What is the connection? Now, what's interesting also is as the Medrash continues, it says that there's an asifa. How does this asifa take place? How does this gathering take place? For Rabban and Amri, the sages say, Tziva Isan al Machlokes, that there was a command that Jacob was guiding his children that they shouldn't be involved in any kind of arguments. There shouldn't be arguments. Amar lahain, he said to them, Tahain kulchain asifa achas. I want you to all be one gathering. In order to be one gathering, to be a group, so it's necessary that everyone respect each other. There can't be any arguments. Everyone has to respect the unique qualities of the others. Hadahu dichsiv. This is what we find the verse says. We actually read it in this past week's Parsha. The verse in Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 16. The verse refers to the fact that Hashem instructed Yechezkel Hanavi, Ezekiel, to take two branches. One of them represented the kingdom of Yehuda, of Judah, and the tribes that were associated with him. One of them represented the kingdom of Ephraim, the kingdom of Joseph, and the tribes that were connected to him. And he was commanded to bring them together until they became one. The verse refers to the fact that they need to be connected. Chaver uksiv, you could read the word, which means to be connected also as becoming friends. Nasu b'nei Yisrael aguda achas, hiskinu atzman la'geula. What is the prerequisite, says the Medrash, for redemption? The prerequisite is when the children of Israel join together as one, when they become friends, when they lose their machlokes, when they lose their arguments. That's when they become ready for redemption, for geula. And here too, we need to understand, what is the idea of losing the arguments, becoming friends? How is that accomplished? And also in light of what we spoke about right before this, in regards to the idea of giving proper honor to Yehuda and Benjamin, how is that accomplished? How do we give honor? How do we lose the machlokes? How do we lose the arguments? How do we become friends? How do we prepare for redemption, for geula? Now there's one last point which I'd like to share with you in the Medrash, and it speaks about Asher Yikra Eschem Achris Hayamim. Jacob wanted to reveal to them, or he revealed to them, that which is going to occur to them in the end of days. So Rashi tells us on the pasuk, on the verse, the classic explanation which many people know, which is that he wanted to reveal when Mashiach was going to come, when the Messiah was going to come, when the end of days was going to occur. But he wasn't able to remember that information as he was about to tell the information to his sons. That's the classical understanding, which actually this Medrash brings down. But there are two different explanations as to what he revealed to his sons, or that which he wished to reveal to his sons. And the first two explanations, actually he was able to reveal to them, because it wasn't about a specific time. The Medrash says like this, Rabbi Simon Omar, Rabbi Simon says, Ma palas goy ger lehem, heichmad Omar ba'achar seyom tiyeh. That which he showed them, what did he teach them? What was he telling them about the end of days? It wasn't about the specific time of the end of days, but it was about one of the occurrences that was going to take place in the end of days, which is the Melchemes Gog uMagog, the War of Armageddon, that war where all the nations come upon Jerusalem to try to fight against the Jewish people, where there's a war that surrounds Jerusalem. That was described by Yaakov Avinu to his sons. And we need to understand, what is the connection between this idea, the concept of the war of Gog and Magog, how does it relate to what was just being spoken of in regards to the coming together, the losing of the argumentativeness between the tribes, the honor that they're showing each other, the honor that they're showing to Yehuda and Benjamin? How does that connect? What does that have to do with the war of Gog and Magog? And then the second point here, Rabbi Yehuda says that what was he revealing to them about the end of days? Binyan Beis Hamikdash Heralehem. He was showing them the temple that's going to be built in all its glory, the final temple. Heichmadat Omar. It's that which we find, it says in the verse in Micha chapter 4 verse 1, V'haya ba'achris hayamim yiyahar Beis Hashem nochain. It will be in the end of days that the Har HaBayis, the Temple Mount, shall be in its proper way. There's going to be a temple there. It's going to be the Jewish temple, the Beis HaMikdash, the third temple, the final temple. So the verse refers to the Achris Hayamim, in the end of days. So this teaches us that that was what Yaakov was speaking about with his sons. He was speaking about the Beis HaMikdash, the temple. Now, we need to understand, we need to see that the war of Gog and Magog, they're coming on Jerusalem. Why is it specifically Jerusalem? Clearly, Jerusalem is the place where the Beis HaMikdash is. It's where the temple is going to be built. It's the place where, as we mentioned before, the Shevet Yehuda and Benjamin, the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, they connect at that place. All of the tribes gather together to Jerusalem, to Yerushalayim, in order to fight against the war of Gog and Magog, in order to win that war, and in order to bring in the age of Mashiach, the times of the Messiah. So all of this is what Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, was speaking about. What is the depth of this idea, or what was he coming to teach them, and how does it connect again? How does this all connect to the concept of the midos, the different attributes that Yaakov Avinu was teaching each of his sons, that Hashem was maskim al yada, that God guided him to give them a correct description of their unique capabilities. So in order to understand this, I want to share with you a medrash which is found, it's on the Perushim, on the Psukim in Malachim, which speak about Eliyahu Bahara Carmel, Elijah the prophet, in his challenge to the Nevi'ei Habal, the prophets of the idolatrous practice, the Baal. There, on Hara Carmel, so Eliyahu directed these 250 Nevi'ei Habal, these false prophets, to bring a sacrifice to their God. And Eliyahu would bring a sacrifice to Hashem, to the true God. And there would be a public display of who would be answered. Would Hashem answer the tefillah of Eliyahu, or would the idolatry answer the prayers of these false prophets? This story is chronicled in 1 Kings, in Melachim Aleph, chapter 18. And this particular verse that we're speaking about is verse 26. The verse says, Vayichlis ha-parsha nasan lahem, vayasu vayikru b'shem habal. They took the cow which Elijah the prophet gave to them, and then they called out in the name of their God, and no fire came down for them. It only came down for Elijah when he called out in the name of Hashem. But the Meforshim point out that it says that they took the animal from Eliyahu. What was the idea? Why did they need to take the animal from Elijah the prophet? And the Perushim explain that there was something that went on there. It's a midrashic type explanation, that Eliyahu took these two cows, one of which was going to be offered up to the idolatrous practice. And the cow that was chosen to go to the idolatrous practice said, I'm not interested. I don't want to be offered for the idolatrous practice. I want to be offered to God. Both I and the other cow came from the same stomach of the same mother. Why do I have to be offered to this false God? And so he refused to move. He didn't want to budge. And Eliyahu took him carefully and he said to him, look, I promise you that there's going to be a Kiddush Hashem, there's going to be a sanctification of God's name that's going to be made by you going in and being offered, because their idolatrous practice is not going to respond to them. So don't have to worry. And the cow said, okay, if that's the case, fine, but I don't agree to do it unless you actually take me and give me over to them. So that's why the verse says that the false prophets took the animal, they took the par from Eliyahu himself, from Elijah. Now what I want to illustrate here, and this is also true about the Seir LaAzazel, the two goats that they were decided which one is going to be to God and which one's going to go off and represent the sins of the Jewish people. You see over here that every midah, that every aspect of reality, that everything that goes on, even the things that seem to be not for God, they seem to not have God in them. Every single aspect of reality has God in them. Everything is meant to reveal godliness in the world. Even the things that seem to be the opposite of that. Everything has its place. There's light and there's darkness, but even the darkness, if we didn't have the darkness, we wouldn't appreciate the light. Now, when we look at the tribes, and we look at their individual characteristics, it seems that there are some tribes that have a greater level, that have a greater closeness to God. You know, we look at Yisachar, they're the ones who are involved in spirituality and learning Torah all of their days, like we mentioned. And Zvulun is only involved in earning a livelihood. Yes, supporting Yisachar, but still it seems like they have a different type of job. It seems like they have a darker job. They're not as spiritual. And yet we understand that they work hand in hand, that Yisachar is able to learn because Zvulun is supporting them. We see that both are essential. And it's also true of all of the tribes. We look at Yehuda and Benjamin, and we see that they are the place. They have the location. The Beis HaMikdash itself is located in their portion. So that means that somehow there's a higher connection that they have. They are an access point for spirituality. They are the ones that have the ability to access Hashem more in a certain sense, and everyone else has to come to them in order to access Yerushalayim, to access Jerusalem, to access God. But Yaakov is telling them, Jacob is instructing the Jewish people, he's instructing the tribes, that if you want to know how to truly access God, which is what the Geula is about, which is what redemption is about, and the Achris Hayom, the end of days, is about, you know how to get there? The way to get there is to recognize and respect the unique role that each of the tribes plays, that each of the personalities within the Jewish people plays in their service of God. When I can come as a regular Israelite and I can respect Yehuda and the fact that he's the king, and I can respect that Yehuda and Benjamin, they have the location, which is the place to access HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to have a relationship with God. When I can gather myself in from all over the world, really, but even all over Eretz Yisrael, all over the land of Israel, and I can come to that place and show respect for that place and bow, as it were, and show respect and not be involved in machlokes. Machlokes, when does the argument come? The argument comes when I try to be who you are and you try to be who I am, and we confuse the roles that we're supposed to play. But when I respect the unique role that you have in coming close to God, even, if I can respect that, if I can let go of the machlokes, if I stop trying to claim being somebody who I'm not, that's when Geula comes. That's when true relationship with Hashem occurs. Do you know what the idea of Gog and Magog is? What is this war? Why is everyone coming to Jerusalem? What are they fighting about? You know what the idea is? And I think this is absolutely true. It's truly the depth of what's going on there and why it's smack in the middle of our discussion and how it relates to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem. The war of Gog and Magog is about a claim. Who rightfully is the one who has access to Jerusalem, who has access to God? Who is the one who brings godliness into the world? Whoever claims Jerusalem is claiming that they are the heirs. They are the ones who are the focal point. They are the ones who receive the light of God and transmit it to the world. Who are the ones that were chosen by God to do this job? The Jewish people. And within the Jewish people, who are the ones that were chosen? Yehuda and Benjamin. They were the ones that were chosen that the place of the temple should be in their portions. So we see that just like when it comes to the tribes, there needs to be a hoidah, there needs to be a kavod, an honor given to the ones who were chosen. So too, when it comes to the Jewish people and the nations of the world, there needs to be an admission and an honoring of who are the ones who are given this special role. In the war of Gog and Magog, other nations lay claim to Jerusalem. Other nations lay claim to the fact that they're the ones who are the access point, the focal point of godliness in the world. But an amazing thing happens. The Jewish people, all of the 10 tribes, they come together, they acknowledge and give honor to Yehuda and Benjamin and acknowledge the fact that they, within the Jewish people, are the focal point. They are the ones who receive godliness, bring it into the world, and bring it to the other tribes. They acknowledge that it's Mashiach ben David, the Messiah, who comes from the house of David, who comes from the house of Yehuda, of Judah, that he is the one who brings that spirituality into the world, that he is the one who Hashem has chosen, just like Yaakov Avinu is able to recognize and nail exactly what is the spiritual kochos, the spiritual abilities of each individual. Mashiach also has that ability. And so when they come and they gather into Jerusalem and give honor to Yehuda and Benjamin, they're really giving honor and giving power to Mashiach himself, to the Messiah. And in so doing, they are saying that those who wish to lay claim to that power, they are wrong. No one else has that power. Even within the Jewish people, no one else has that power except for those who Hashem chose to have that power. When there's that acknowledgement, when there's that lack of machlokes, that lack of arguing about who has which role, when the roles become clear, when everything is defined, that's when we have aguda achas. We have that one group. Everyone joins together. We speak about the aguda achas, that joining together. When do we speak about that? On Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur, bringing it back to the first idea that we spoke about. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur also have this aspect of making clear who's who in the service of Hashem. When the false gods, they fall, when the false assumptions as to who are the heirs of godliness in the world, who are the ones who are the ambassadors of godliness into the world, when all of those false assumptions fall away and are destroyed, in the Mapalas Gog is what the Medrash speaks about, the fall of Gog, the fall of those lies, what happens is we have access to the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, what Yaakov showed them, what Jacob wanted to show them, which was the temple being built, that place, which is in the portion of Yehuda and Benjamin, in the place of Mashiach ben David, in that place of Jerusalem. That's what happens. The result of everything being in its right place, everyone being in their right place. The result is having access to the Beis Hamikdash, having access to that temple, having access to the Geula Shlema, the complete redemption. I want to bless you. Please bless me back. Hashem should help us to recognize what is our individual role in life. What is our special and unique mission? Hashem should help us see it and not be jealous of anybody else, and not try, even when it comes to spiritual matters, not try to be someone who we're not. Hashem should help us to have the kavod, the honor, to respect those who have perhaps greater missions than us. But by us recognizing that, Hashem should help us to strengthen our unique role, our unique goal. And in that way, we should be able to experience the peace, the lack of machlokas, the lack of arguments. And Hashem should help us to experience that oneness, that coming together, the heyasvu. Hashem should help us to all be zocha, to merit, to see the geula shalema, the complete redemption, speedily and in our days. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.